there was a lot to take away from Danny Briere and Brent Flahr's meeting with the media today, and I'm sure you did a little bit of digging before and after the fact. So people are kind of panicked right now, from what I can tell on Twitter. Shocker. I know that people are irrational on Twitter, but I've seen people getting worried that the Flyers are going to reach at number 6 and that they're going to go essentially off the board from what a lot of people would expect them to do at 6, much in the way that like last year, Jet Lashenko maybe wasn't the consensus pick at that spot in the draft. Some felt like he might have been a reach. Can you reassure the people that one of like the 6 to 8 names that we would expect to be in that spot will ultimately be the pick if they remain at 6? You're talking about maybe does a Porter Martone fall? Does a Hagens fall? Does a Frondell fall? Probably not, but maybe. Does a Denoyer fall? Will the Flyers go batshit crazy? And I think Kimmelman asked the question about Roger McQueen. One of those names, do you think any of those tickle the Flyers' fancy, or are they really going to do something here that's going to piss off a lot of people? Where are you at right now?
Well, let's put it this way. Like, Caleb Denoyer remains their preference if he makes it there.
Okay.
I kind of got a sense from talking to some people within the organization that their intel is that Denoyer won't make it to 6. They believe so. I can pretty much tell you that your first 3 picks are going to be Matthew Schaefer is going to go 1, Michael Meese is going to go 2, and then Frondell is going to go 3. That is, I think, pretty much locked in, set it in stone. Nothing's going to change. Things start to get interesting at 4 because Utah's at 4. Now, keep in mind, Utah is a team, an organization. Over the last 2 years, 2 years ago they were in Arizona, last year Utah, that kind of went off the board with their pick at 6 in both years. If you remember, there was a thought that they were going to take Mishkov at 6, preventing the Flyers from getting him, and they went off the board and went Simishev, who a lot of people had down in the teens, and then the Flyers were able to get Mishkov. Last year they took Tija Ginla at 6, who people kind of thought was going to go in the 10 to 12 range, and they took him at 6. Yeah. So I think there's a real belief that they could be a little bit of a wild card in this thing. But there's a real thought that if it gets to if Denoyer gets to Nashville, that's a really good fit for them. Most of their centers are big physical centers. So having a skill center that they could plug into that grouping, into that mix, makes sense. And he would probably be the most skilled available center left at 5 if he's there. Who goes 4 is the real indicator. There's some people that I talk to who think Brady Martin could be a guy that jumps up there to Utah. Obviously, James Hagen's name comes into play. For both Utah and Nashville. So it's really going to be interesting to see what happens. Now, I know that Brent Flahr said today that they have a list of 10 to 12 names, but I think that what he meant by that is the entire group has a list of 10 to 12 names that they really like for their first pick, but that his list is really kind of narrowed down. And Danny even said it earlier in the press conference when he said a lot of the other teams are going to kind of dictate the pick for us because what happens in front of them will, they're going to narrow down the Flyers' choices to maybe 2 or 3 names that they're going to have to decide between. So when you say go off the board, the question is, what do you consider off the board? Like, I'm told that the next choice that they have after Denoyer.
You better be careful.
Why?
No, go ahead. Go ahead. No, okay. I'm just saying you better be careful because I have a feeling that you're going to say something that's going to incense people. Your body language changed. That's usually when you unveil something.
No, I don't think it'll incense people. I think that this name has gotten some positive commentary on social media. It's Jake O'Brien. It would be the guy.
Okay.
And the thing of it is that if you look at like Craig Button's list on TSN or Paul Bacala's list on Sportsnet CA, they have him ranked like 11, 12.
Yeah.
But Danny, even today, now he wasn't talking about any specific player when he said this. He said, the experts have their rankings and that's all well and good. He said, but I'd much prefer taking scouts who have, watched these guys 100 times over and written up 100 reports on them over a guy who watches a player on tape once or twice and decides that that's how they're going to rank a guy. Yeah. So, like I said, he wasn't saying that specifically about Jake O'Brien, but it makes you, for him to say that, it makes you kind of identify that maybe they're talking about a guy that he was talking about a guy that they're really looking at. And it might not be a guy that anybody has him on 6, has him at 6. So the big question, I'll throw this to you and then you can take it from there, is it possible, and I wrote this, my story is out on Pattison, and I just put it out about 20 minutes ago, half hour ago. What if they trade down out of 6 because they think they can get O'Brien a little bit later in the first round if Denoyer is gone? Where is
How's that for an answer? I'll shut this shit down. Trading down? Are you out of your fucking mind? You're telling me that after they finished with the 4th best odds of getting the number 1 overall pick, they fall 2 spots. They sit on the dais today and say, well, we were kind of bummed in the moment, but now we're not really that upset about it. If they trade down, Anthony, down, this city's going to light itself on fire. This fan base is going to light itself on fire. Now, I will give you one bit of credit here, or I'll give a little bit of merit to this line of thinking. If we are being fair and transparent about it, many of the people who follow this team have not watched a lot of film on these guys. They couldn't tell you the first thing about how Porter Martone plays. They couldn't tell you the first thing about Roger McQueen other than he had the back injury. They couldn't tell you damn thing about Ekman. They couldn't tell you about Brady Martin. They couldn't tell you shit about Jake O'Brien, except they just don't like hearing O'Brien. And they might not like hearing Denoyer because there's another Denoyer. Like, people don't really have much to work off of with these guys, if we're being fair, right? It feels like there is a very clear number 1. There is a very clear number 2 in Misa. And then 3 to what we thought was going to be 3 to 6, right, has really kind of devolved into like 3 to 10, maybe even 3 to 12, right? Like, if we're being honest about it, if we're looking at what mock drafts kind of looked like at the end of the regular season, or even, let's say, like back in February, March, no one thought Hagens was going to fall to 6. There's a very likely possibility that he could. O'Brien was a name that was just starting to come up on the top 10. McQueen was a guy that, because of the back injuries, everybody thought was going to, maybe still end up being a top 8 guy, but could maybe fall to 15. But you really don't know what to make of that medical report. So I hate it. Genuinely, I hate the idea of trading back unless you are getting an additional asset that you're going to flip to get somebody in here who helps the team right away. But at the same time, I don't know what that looks like. There was the report out there that Chicago might be shopping number 3. There's that theory out there that Utah, because everything is found money at this point from jumping up 10 spots, that maybe Utah would trade out of number 4. I don't know if any of the guys who are going to be on the board at, like, let's say 4, I think Utah is more likely to move out. I don't know if, like, Frondl, for example, or I don't know, like, do you want to move up to get Denoyer because you're convinced that he should be a top 4 guy? Like, I don't know. I hate the idea. I do. I think the optics of trading down are bad. I guess I could fundamentally understand how somebody could look at it and say, if it's a clear number 1 and a clear number 2, pick up the asset. But what's the asset, Ant? Like, it can't be a second round pick. Like, that doesn't mean shit. Well, like, what is an asset?
Here's Phil Original's comment, which I put up on the screen. It says, real question is, how much value can Briere extract from moving down 3 to 4 spots? I do it if the Flyers guy is available at 8, 9, 10, and you get a 2026 first round pick in return.
Unprotected.
So I mean,
yeah,
that's his
unprotected, so that you get another potential lottery ticket, right?
Yeah, that's what his.
Yeah, I mean,
he's cool with that.
You want another entry for Gavin McKenna. That's the hope, right? Like that, but Possibly. It can't be a bottom. Like it can't be a contending team though, because that team's not going to be in the lottery.
No. And so the teams that I identified in my story that I'm told are trying to move up, and right now, I mean, and Danny said it in the press conference. Nobody has indicated yet that they're willing to move down. Okay. Everybody he's talked to is trying to move up. So you got teams that are trying to go up, right? And when he said, and I want to read his exact quote, and then I'll get into specifics. Briere says, I'm going to make a lot of calls to try and gauge interest, but so far it's been pretty quiet on that front. It feels like everybody is trying to move up at the moment, and we've said from the beginning we'd like to try to move up if possible, but right now there's just not a lot of options there. So we'll have to be patient, and maybe there's an opportunity where we can create value going the other way. That's when he's talking about possibly moving down.
Wow, so they have the teams going the other way. They have the Alec Boehm spray chart here. I love that.
I think that you're looking at Anaheim as a team that wants to move up from 10. I think Detroit wants to move up from 13. I was told Montreal is willing to package both 16 and 17 together to move up to a certain spot in the draft. I don't think that they would go down that far. I don't think they would go down that far because I don't think that the player that they want falls that far. But
if McQueen falls to 16, but you just have no way to know. You know me, I'm like very much on the McQueen because you can't teach size. I get that he didn't play exactly. There's the critique against him is that he doesn't play as big as his body is, which is a problem, right? Especially if you have a 6'5" frame. But if he starts to fall, my hope has been that they're going to trade back up from 22. I guess the question there, Ann, is like, all right, so say it's Montreal, 16 and 17 together to move up to 6. It feels like the quality of player, right? That's in that, let's say 3 to 10 tier, 3 to 12 tier. That is a tier. And then it does feel like it falls off. And so I don't know how this team gets better that way.
No, I don't think
you are really talking about then like that to me feels too far. Could Buffalo want to move up from 9? Did they get frisky? And because that to me, like if you're going to move back, Buffalo's going to suck. So like you're hedging that you're going, as long as it's an unprotected pick next year, that you have a high chance of potentially being in the Gavin McKenna sweepstakes, especially if as the Flyers, you're hoping that your team's going to be playoff adjacent next year. Like that one maybe doesn't, but to trade to a team, I don't know. Trading with a team that could end up being playoff bound and trying to get like a pick next year out of it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, so Buffalo, we'll talk a little bit about Buffalo a little bit later because that's also something I wanted to talk about today. I think that they're a team that is got an itchy trigger finger. They got some money issues up there. I think that they're, right now, I think their asking price for their players is way too high, as it usually is this point out. Maybe that changes things. We'll get into Buffalo. I think that there is a possibility there, right? I mean, that is a maybe, but I think you have to really weigh what you're getting in a deal with them, right? So yeah, and look, the Flyers want to move up too, and I think that they want to move up from 22. When Danny says, "Well, we want to move up too," of course they want to move up from 6. I mean, obviously, they would if they could get the player that they really wanted. I just don't think that you're going to see teams in the top 4 or 5 spots trade out. I just don't think it's going to happen. So if they're not going to go up from 6, either they pick at 6 or they're going to move down. But they would like to go up from 22 into that teens range. Question is, how far can you go up from 22? And what does it cost? What is the price to do that? Now they have a glut of picks, right? So I mean, they could even potentially overpay slightly to move up from say 22 to say 15. Let's throw that just a random number. I know that's Vancouver. I have no inkling that conversation has happened. I picked the number out of the air. But let's say you want to move up from 22 to 15. What does that cost you? Does that cost you the second first rounder? Does that cost you 2 seconds? Right? Like what is the price on that? And then you sit there and say, are you willing to do that for the player that you're going to go after? Yeah. I think an interesting thing. Somebody told me today that we talked about Roger McQueen, and I asked someone today. I said, what do you think about him and with his medicals and everything? And I was told that the medicals turned out pretty good at the combine. Like,
damn,
everybody was,
damn it,
yeah, they were good. Damn. But the response was the response was McQueen can go anywhere from 5 to 15. Like they don't know. It's another wild card, just because you don't know. And your internet's starting to go, by the way. I don't know if you know this, but yeah, he could go anywhere between 5 and 15. And so you really have to try and figure out.
There's another bit of variance there, though, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not just the skill, and it's not just why I think he could fall is if you look at the teams that pick after the Flyers, and you look at the tenure of their GMs, there are going to be some of these teams that are not going to want to use that high draft capital to take what could ultimately be a boom or bust player that some might have viewed as having a higher boom than bust because of the medicals. Now, maybe if you feel better about the medicals, then it's not as bad. But what do we know about GMs in this league, Ant? And GMs in like all professional sports? They do put a lot into keeping their jobs. Sometimes they make a pick that's a safer pick because they want to save their job more so than do what's best for their team. And so I wonder if there are going to be a few GMs that are going to look at the board as it develops and say, you know what, I might feel better about the likelihood of an Eklund ending up being able to make an impact sooner, or Brady Martin being able to make an impact sooner. And if they view McQueen as being somebody who's 3 years out, you might not have that time. Danny Briere on the flip side has time. He and Keith Jones, I think, still have a few seasons before the seats even start to get remotely warm. So they have the ability, I think, to take that shot. I don't think that every other GM in this league does.
No, it's fair. And I will say one of the things that Danny said in the press conference that I thought was really kind of an interesting thing that kind of goes to your point. And I'm loving that you're freezing mid coffee sip here. Is that right now picks are just numbers, and that the value of a pick changes once a general manager is able to identify a name. So what he means by that is once another GM realizes here's the player I can get with that pick, that might make them be more willing to play ball in a trade for that spot, as opposed to just taking a number and hoping that you get the guy that you want in that spot, right? Yeah. So it's one of those things where that deal doesn't come into play until the pick is up, right? At that point, then it's like, oh, okay, now we'll make the deal. So I think that's an interesting way of looking at it. Another name, and I mentioned this in my story as well, that I know that they like, and you haven't heard boo out of the Flyers on this. I tried to ask a couple people today, and they wouldn't really engage on this, but I've heard it kind of through the grapevine. Is Jackson Smith, defenseman, who is one of the first junior hockey players to make the jump from Canadian junior to the NCAA. Now that they've relaxed that restriction, you're allowed to jump from Canadian junior to the NCAA now. And Jackson Smith's going to go play at Penn State.
Intern Andrew's probably intern Andrew going to get his jersey. Do you think by puck drop in the fall? Right?
Yeah, there you go. Get his jersey. So I think that's a name that if Jackson Smith starts to fall down into the teens a little bit, and there's a thought that that's probably where he's going to go, then that's where the Flyers try and jump up from 22. I don't think he makes it to 22. I really don't.
No.
But can you get from
I've seen
22
mocks
to
that have
16?
him going. Yeah, I've seen mocks that have him going closer to 12, anywhere from 10 to 12.
Yeah. Well, again, mocks are mocks.
Yeah, but
keep that in mind.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
hard to imagine he falls that far. Trying to think, there's what the one defenseman who people have seemed like otherwise kind of interested in is the guy from Czechia, right? Is it Murtka? Radim Murtka? Yeah. He's been one that I guess maybe gets a look. I don't know.
We'll see. I mean, and so I did ask Brent Flahr today during the press conference about 22 to 48, those picks, like what you're looking at there. And he said, what you see there is you have, wingers with skill, but maybe they're on the smaller side. Centers who are more middle of the lineup type centers, but still really valuable players. Or some bigger defensemen who maybe need a little bit more time to develop before they can get to the NHL, but you can be really excited about them because you think that the talent is there. It just needs to be molded and kind of worked. So like that's what he said you're looking at between 22 and 48. So I think that there's some real interesting things that are going to happen with this team over the course of the next 10 days. It won't really kick in, I think, until the beginning of next week. I don't think anything's going to happen. Justin Shaniki's asking, so Martone is no longer a thought at this point. I don't think he ever really was for them. I really don't. I do not think they're taking a winger at pick 6. They need a center, and that's what they're going to take. So I don't think Martone is really in the mix, unless for some reason he plummets and then you could trade up. But I don't see that happening either. So no, I don't think Martone is a candidate for the Flyers.
Why is it that he's not? I've lost you partway through that. Why is he not remotely on the radar at 6?
They're not looking to draft a winger.
Who the fuck
at that
cares?
high?
Can I bang the table, Ant? Can I just say, like, I am so sick and tired of the idea that like you have to draft for need all the time. Team sucks. Team doesn't have a lot of high upside guys. I get that they have a lot of wings. I get it. But if he's a good player, if he's the best player.
It's not even that. It's not that. It's what you're doing is you're looking at it and you say, there are always wings available. There are always wings available in free agency. There are always wings available via trade. Wings are the most, where there's the most depth of finding it elsewhere, right? Yeah. Sure, if there's no centers that are available that are worth taking above him, then yeah, you take the winger. But the reality of it is that in this draft, centers between spots 3 and 2, really, if you count Misa, between 2 and 12, centers are what's there, and that's what these teams are going to take. It's really what it is. So yes, they to answer Tony Louis' question, they'd take Jake O'Brien over Porter Martone. Yes, they would. Yes, and they would take Denoyer over both of them. So yeah, I mean, I just think that's it is what it is. So anyway, that's where it's at. Russ is still trying to figure his stuff out. I got a few other things that I wanted to talk about. Let me bring this one up first. Jamie Rollo says, would they really pass on Hagens? Insane. I'm not convinced that they are going to pass on Hagens because I think Hagens might get picked right before them. We'll see. I mean, there's a lot but if I'll tell you right now, if it is O'Brien and Hagens, I think they're going O'Brien. I really do. And I think it's a tough call for them, but I think that they're going O'Brien. I really do. So, and I know fans are not going to be happy with this. It's fine. If you're not happy with it, you're not happy with it. Right. It just is is what it is.